Hello and welcome back to Getting Lost with myself, Gooder, and my good friend
Dan, and it's all about the numbers this week.
It is very much indeed all about the numbers. So here is, I guess, one of Lost's classic bits of madness kicking in properly for the first time.
Yeah, this was definitely one where you're going, what the hell? What? Huh? Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know where to start with this one because the whole episode essentially introduces this whole new thing that has been I'd say it's been a little bit hinted at before. In that, I mean, I picked up on the sort of recurrence of what I thought was an important number, which was 815, which is actually two of these magical numbers combined. Yeah. But it's sort of adding, it so much proper supernatural something or other going on in one fell swoop.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing for me in terms of the supernatural bit is it's another one that's cleverly set up where it gives you wiggle room. It's either supernatural and the numbers are cursed.
Yep.
Or it's all in Hurley's head, because obviously we know he's picked up the numbers from his time in like a psychiatric hospital.
Yeah.
Or it's Hurley, not necessarily like it's not all imagined, but it's Hurley kind of applying something he believes to just coincidences.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make that case to some extent on the notion of the curse, but I don't think you can make like a completely. Okay, well, I don't think you can make a completely rational case that about the numbers, given the path that it takes for Hurley to get to the island with the numbers, given the whole, there was a transmission, which we later learn did definitely come from the island, because we learned from Danielle this was a transmission that was sending these numbers out, that then went to some guys working for the US Navy, which then went to a person in the psychiatric wing who's just repeatedly repeating the numbers.
I think, yeah, there's definitely like an element there where there's definitely a path of the numbers like drawing people in. Yeah, that's definitely there. But I think you can still kind of question like to what extent, is the curse.
Yeah. Yeah, that you can certainly create, and everyone does. I mean, that's one of the themes of the episode, is that Hurley gets increasingly frustrated by the fact that he keeps coming across people who should agree with him on the notion that the numbers are cursed or there's something wacky going on.
Yeah.
But his own mum sort of hits him around the head and says, "No, we're Catholics. We don't believe in curses." And then when he comes across, I've forgotten her name, but the woman in Australia who survived her husband putting a shotgun to his face, saying, "Oh no, it's just made up. It's just it's not a curse." And then the initial stuff when he comes across Danielle, and finally the sort of Danielle agrees with me. It's great. But at the same time, in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, but she's possibly a crazy person. So,
yeah. I mean, it is, unfortunately, it's one of those frustrating things you often get in American television in particular, where they give away part of their surprise in the first few seconds because a particular actor or actress's name comes up in the credits.
Right.
Danielle's going to be in this episode because Amelia Furlan's name comes up, and it's like, but it'd be so much better if you didn't have that.
Yeah, but I mean, you pretty much assume that they're going to find her when they sort of embark on Hurley's quest. Like, I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a complete surprise that she turns up as you get into the episode. But from literally the very few seconds of the episode, she's going to be in it.
Yeah,
it's like a small thing, but it's kind of like, I wish they didn't do that.
Yeah, it's an interest. If you take the notion that, because as you say, you can go two ways. You can assume there's a whole bunch of coincidences going on in terms of the curse, or you can assume there is something about the curse. And the curse itself is an interesting kind of mechanic, because it's seemingly kind of like almost karma linked, in that in order for you to have all of this luck, other people must therefore suffer because of it.
Yeah.
And therefore, the absolute worst thing to do is to take these numbers and use it to win the lottery, because that's such a huge amount of luck that's come onto you. All of these bad things are going to happen elsewhere. And that's the two characters that we know about that have used the numbers for their own gain, which is Hurley and forgotten the guy's name, the US Navy guy.
Oh, yeah, the guy who goes out to find.
Yeah, Sam Tooney, and he uses it to win the bean competition.
Yeah, it's very much established that you have to use the numbers. It's not just enough to know the numbers. You have to kind of use them in some context.
Yeah, it's a case of taking the numbers, putting them in a position. But it's also interesting that in both of those examples, neither of them knew the importance of it. Like, neither of them went into it going, "Oh, I'm going to win the lottery by using these numbers." It's just like, "Oh, I've heard these numbers. I'm going to use them." And what I guess might be interesting, and we haven't seen yet, is I'd be interested to know, like, what would happen if Hurley, or Sam can't because he's killed himself, but if Hurley then goes, "Oh, well, okay, I'm going to deliberately use the numbers again for something."
Yeah.
That's kind of like the next step in terms of, how does this work? Because you've got the I always find it whenever I get any kind of supernatural bit, you always kind of want to sort of pick it apart and go, right, how does this actually mechanic work? If you're making this as a D&D thing, what would be the sort of rules around how this works or anything like that? And that's sort of immediately where my mind goes with this sort of thing. It goes, okay, so, do you have to deliberately use it, or is it just sort of, accidentally do it? Are the rules like, there's quite a number of important numbers here. I mean, not being able to use the number 4 in your everyday life might be a bit inconvenient. It's like, can I have somewhere between 3 and 5 of these items? You ask at the local supermarket, or, So yeah, it's kind of like, I liked the mechanic sort of there. But it immediately made me go, "Oh, I really want to know how this works, and if it is a real thing."
Yeah, and I think you get some interesting little bits here as well, where it's still kind of a thing, I guess, or you get some more hints about how real or not the what's going on with the numbers might be, because you get the bit where they're going through the jungle and there's that kind of flimsy rope bridge.
Yeah,
and Hurley gets across okay. And you would think, if Hurley can make it, everybody can make it. As Charlie says it, in a kind of comedy way, like, you made it.
I weigh half as much as him. I can clearly make this.
And of course, like it collapses as Charlie goes across. So again, it's that it's kind of giving you that suspicious almost element of like, Hurley's fine. Like, Hurley's kind of blessed almost, and it's people around him that are being affected by the.
Yeah, and that's the sort of interesting, like, you had these multiple references that effectively that Hurley was still being lucky for some reason or another. And you had the rope bridge, you had the being able to dodge out the way of the big trap.
The bit where he's talking to his accountant, and the accountant's like, "Your stocks have gone up.
Yeah,
like your factory burned down and people died, but you made money because we overinsured it."
And then the little throwaway bit where he says, "Oh, you own a box company," which is clearly Locke's box company.
Yeah,
nice little connection in that little sequence. So yeah, but at the same time, like, Hurley isn't like getting every single bit of good luck going by any stretch of the imagination. You assume, because, well, obviously he was in a plane that crashed. That seems fairly unlucky. He's stuck on an island. But then you've got these undertones. Maybe that is actually, ultimately going to be perceived as good luck, but it certainly doesn't seem that way. And you also have, like, there's the fact that he lost the backgammon game massively to Walt because Walt was like insanely lucky. And Walt's the other character that has a sort of luck element associated with him. And it's whether or not that's with Walt, is it luck? Is it some other kind of supernatural thing that's going on? So yeah, there's a few other little connections in terms of what is actually going on in terms of the luck. And it probably the bit that sort of, I think, attempts to sort of summarize it is, we'll talk about it. I'm sure, but there's the lovely sequence between Locke and Claire, and I think it's Claire asked Locke, "Oh, do you believe in luck?" Because Locke says, "Oh, your birthdays will be similar time. I believe that's lucky," and he doesn't say yes in that simple fashion, he sort of says, "I believe in many things,"
Yeah.
which is kind of taking the concept that you might have this idea of luck or karma or something going on, but actually it could be part of a much bigger belief or something that's going on. And I think that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the number thing, that it's not just quite as simple as, oh, Hurley's going to be really lucky and people around him are going to suffer.
It's intriguing that obviously you'd already picked up on the recurrence of 8 and 15 in particular.
Yeah. And I think that, unfortunately, I mean, even when I watched this episode a second time, I was like, there's a 4, there's a 4, there's another 4. So I've got a bad feeling that every episode onwards, I'm just going to be like,
looking for like, there are 4 characters standing there. Yeah, I think it's another one of these. I think ones where the people behind the show kind of play with it a little bit, where sometimes, they are connected. Sometimes they are definitely connecting things into this concept, and sometimes there are just other kind of numbers coming up. Mr. X, like deliberate kind of sending people off.
Yeah, and there's a few things that like, I mean, the one that I clocked, which they've mentioned before, and again, it could be to do with the numbers, but also at the same time, the numbers encompass such a range that there's bound to be coincidences in there as well. But there was the fact that I think it was 16 years ago, which 16 is one of the numbers, was when Sam Tooley heard the transmission. And it's kind of interesting that I'm pretty sure 16 years was the length of time that Danielle's transmission had been going.
Yeah, because we do actually, we actually, Danielle actually says that she kind of,
they found it and then changed the transmission.
Her ship picked up the numbers and then she found the tower and changed the transmission.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's like intriguing to my mind that is that must mean that all of that stuff must have happened within a year, or at least within probably less than a year, in order for people to still be referring to it as 16 years ago. So probably a fairly short number of months' time, whereby Danielle and co on her boat heard the transmission, which they've got to then get shipwrecked, explore the island, find the radio tower, have this whole sickness thing happen, and then she changes transmission. Versus at the same time, we know externally we've got Sam and the other guy, Lenny. I think his name is Lenny.
Yeah.
Listening on the radio tower, who hear it also 16 years ago. The numbers repeating. So they hear that, they don't hear Danielle's.
Yeah. So whatever happens to those two happens before Danielle starts transmitting her message.
Because and that's the thing that you sort of go, oh, that's interesting, because if all she's done is gone, right, stop playing this, play this, and the US Navy picked up on it before, like why have in 16 years no one from the US Navy picked up on this distress call in the intervening space of time? So there's the fact that all of that occurred in that same space of time historically kind of feels like that. Oh, that's interesting. Because I'm assuming at some point down the line, we're going to learn more about the Danielle thing that happened 16 years ago. And this is like the first sort of hint. There's also going to be something going on, which means why did her transmission never reach?
Yeah. What's quite funny is a lot of the things that happen to or around Hurley are played for laughs, pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, it's quite black humor, but like his grandfather, like literally has a heart attack and dies whilst they're doing the press conference about how his grandfather can now have rest.
And in fact, it's the first 3 flashbacks 2, 3, and 4, where you get, oh, he's just won the lottery, and you have the heart attack. You then have him taking his mother to the new house, and literally everything that could go wrong goes wrong.
The house burns down, she breaks her ankle. As they're driving up to it, you hear about the funeral for his granddad, where somebody else got struck by lightning.
Yeah. It's just like, whoa. And then you got the, when he's talking to his accountant, it's like, oh yeah, all these people died, but you've made money. And then it ends with just like someone plummeting down the building. And then the next flashback after that, they kind of almost I'm not sure if it's quite a lampshade, but they sort of, you see the guy going up to fix the light.
Yeah.
And Hurley's like, just don't do that. Don't do that. Stop that now.
I mean, to be fair, who trained that handyman? Because he's trying to like
Yeah.
set up his ladder and he's like reaching right over. To, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that once you get the once Hurley effectively has made the realization about the numbers, the rest of the flashbacks, first of all, they don't have that stuff going on around him. There's no other crazy bad luck that happens past that point, and it becomes far more focused on his search to find out, where did these numbers come from? Why are they like it was? Which is, what he's doing on the island at the same time. In the present day stuff, the non-flashback bits, which is, again, he's continuing this quest quite determinedly and single-mindedly to try and find out the origin of these numbers.
I think another thing you can ask is that there seems to be this trail of the numbers kind of drawing people in, but the aspect of it we don't get from here is, why was Hurley in the hospital?
Yes. Yeah.
Like earlier in the flashbacks, we kind of get the hints about he's caused his family trouble or whatever, and you don't really know what that is. Then obviously you realize he was institutionalized, but we don't know why.
Yeah. And you have that interesting interaction with presumably his old doctor, where the doctor's like almost surprised to see him back as well. So it's not like, given that the other patients that we see are fairly severe cases of mental health issues. It's not like it's like relatively well-adjusted people sort of going in for therapy or anything like that. The institution he's been in clearly caters for the extreme end of the scale. So it does ask a big question as to, why was Hurley there? And if he was there, the fact that the doctor is like, oh, I'm surprised to see you, and all this sort of thing suggests that maybe he shouldn't have been there, or
or whatever. Like Hurley had recovered sufficiently. The doctor's just like, oh, he'll be fine.
But that's clearly a part of Hurley. I mean, there's several parts of Hurley that you get this episode that you just haven't seen before. You get that. You get the an actual demonstration that, Hurley can actually do stuff. He's actually quite, if he sets his mind to it, he can be very determined. And he might not physically look like your classic, I'm going to go out adventuring person. But he demonstrates both in the flashbacks and the stuff on the island a real sense of determination, and I'm going to do this. He again suffers from the constant lost issue of, I'm really determined, I'm going to do this. I'm also going to do it entirely on my own, just to be clear. No help, not telling you where I'm going.
I think, to be fair with this one, Hurley has his reasons for that, and he has that constant thing where everybody he tells about this just go, that's crazy, that's stupid. And like you say, you get that nice moment where like Danielle's like, oh yeah, you're right, maybe these numbers are cursed, and he's just like, and he just hugs them.
And Danielle's just sort of awkward.
I love that, but you have that kind of thing, and like Danielle's just like doesn't know how to react to this. And then you kind of like the next scene or whatever, like Hurley's got the battery, so he's obviously had like kind of like chat afterwards with Danielle, which like, can we have a battery, please? Again, more information not shared with the group, but it's like, well, clearly you must have had a chat. They must have gone back to wherever she keeps her batteries. I'm assuming she didn't have a battery just on her. It's quite a big battery. And I love this. There's this little moment which I love as well, where they've had the scene where like, I think it's like opposite with like Jack and Saeed, and they're like looking through this kind of blast site where the bomb's gone off from Danielle's trap, and then Charlie like appears, and everybody's like, oh, we have to look for Hurley, and then Hurley just kind of appears from like the other side. And then like Hurley's like, I've got the battery, and then people kind of everybody walks out of shot like towards the camera, and like Hurley and Jack and Charlie are kind of smiling and quite happy, And so he's just got like this really annoyed look on his face, like, what the fuck? Like, why is she just giving him a battery?
Yeah. It's like, what did I get? I got tortured, picked on. He gets a battery. Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, there's clearly more to come from Danielle, because Danielle's still, you know, a really interesting sort of mysterious character.
Yeah, you get another mention from her of the Black Rock.
Yeah.
And so far, you just have that name.
Yeah, it's definitely like the people on the island have now heard this reference to the Black Rock quite a few times. I'm kind of thinking someone should be, maybe having a look for it at some point.
What is this?
Yeah, but I mean, now they actually have a legitimate motivation as well, because assuming Hurley eventually tells them, which, you know, given Lost is now, we've learned that the radio transmission tower, you know, there's a radio tower by the Black Rock, which if you're stuck on an island wanting rescue, a radio tower sounds like might be a useful thing to try and find. So there's now a definitive motivation as to why you'd want to locate this area, to try and find it and do the transmission thing.
I think, and of course, like through the episode, like you get all the weirdness with the numbers, and like there's clearly a big thing about these numbers and why are they on Danielle's notes and like all the stuff around Hurley.
Yeah.
And then the big final curveball is the numbers are etched on the side of the hatch.
Yeah, etched on the side of the hatch. So, which I'm not necessarily sure that, like, it wasn't. It was like an interesting reveal, but it wasn't like a big shocking reveal, because we'd already learned at that point, you know, that the numbers were associated with the island. There was something going on there, and so it felt like it was more of okay, yeah. So it's also that this hatch fits into that element of the island as well, and so there's this sort of slight frustration that at this point you're kind of thinking, right, Locke knows about the hatch. Locke is really intrigued about the hatch. That's his mystery, is the hatch. Hurley's got these numbers. Yeah. If the two of you talk, if you knew about these things, maybe this would be.
Yeah. Well, I guess at this point you don't even know whether Locke knows those numbers are there.
No. Well, he's been staring at the hatch for a long period of time, so presumably he's seen them. Yeah.
You would assume he has, but yeah.
But Locke's not been involved in any of the interactions with the Danielle's maps stuff.
No.
Had the notes on that, or with this episode in terms of the Hurley stuff.
I guess the only kind of thing I get, or the only kind of connection there potentially, is we know Locke has talked to Sayid about Danielle's maps and papers. They've had a conversation about that, but you don't know whether it's gone beyond kind of Sayid just saying it's nonsense, whether Locke actually knows what's written.
Yeah, I mean, he's never shown any. What's interesting thinking about it is he's never shown any interest in any of the maps and bits and pieces. Like, the extent, I think, of the conversation about it was when he sort of gave up and gave him his compass.
Yeah,
a few episodes back. But he very much, wasn't going. You'd think, given all the exploring and things you'd done, Locke might have been intrigued to sort of go, oh yeah, I recognise this bit. That's that bit over there where I hunt the boar or something like that. But he never showed any investment in finding out anything about it.
And I think. And they kind of, I guess, like notes and other little things column. Best way of describing it. Got some nice bits in here. I like the fact that you're progressively seeing more and more kind of like shelters and things that they've built. I think that's a nice touch to kind of remind you that time is passing and they're actually kind of building stuff. And you see them doing it in a couple of sections of the. I think last week you saw them. Yeah, last week you see kind of Shannon like tying up tarpaulin and stuff, and then I think this week, you see like Sayid like wake up and he's got he's in a little tent.
Yeah, and they've talked about I think last episode Sawyer. Was it last episode? Might have been 2 episodes ago where Sawyer said, "Oh yeah, he gave up." Being able to build half of his beach house because of the wire he'd sort of done for the raft or something.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of a nice little touch on the production side. you get a little bit more again of Shannon and Saeed kind of building up a relationship there.
Yep.
You also have like the repeating theme of again, it's like a horrible term, of the kind of alpha male characters kind of butting heads.
Yep.
Like Saeed and Jack, like Saeed immediately is like quite aggressive when he's like, you told Hurley to come and do this, you've asked Hurley to do that, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
Jack's just like, what? But it's just, I find it interesting that it's never, they don't kind of have like polite conversations about it. Like Saeed's immediately like quite angry about it.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, you get the little bit of a scene with Son and Kate kind of.
Yeah, I noted that one down. That was a good follow up to the previous episode. I mean, it's only a very short little scene, but it's you sort of see Jin helping Michael on the boat, and then you cut to Son and Kate sitting talking. And the line I jotted down was, "He's never going to speak to me again," which is the sort of key follow up from the previous episodes, and is incredibly ironic in context, given that means Jin can literally speak to no one on the island, because he doesn't. No one else speaks the same language as him. Yeah. The one person that he could speak to, he now won't speak to.
We do see that Jin is picking up English, because I think at one point he points, or he's helping Michael, and he says, "Oh yeah," he kind of appears with like a load of bamboo or something and says the boat to Michael.
Yeah, I think that might be in the previous episode. I think that was the end of the last episode. Yeah, but yeah, you're sort of seeing bits and pieces. But there's still like the barrier, because I think this episode has him trying to explain to Hurley that he wants the bamboo tightened up.
Yeah.
And Michael can kind of figures out what he's trying to communicate to him. But
and I just thought that little bit of a scene with Son and Kate is quite nice as well, because it's like another bond forming between a pair of characters. Like so far, most of the time we only really see Kate interacting with Jack and Sawyer really for any length of time, or like in times where it's not some kind of immediate crisis.
Yeah.
So
yes, and that's been building for a little while, the Kate Son thing, basically since she's cottoned on that she's spoken. And so it made sense that was going to be the sort of building relationship, because she was the only character for a period of time where she could talk to. And I think the other thing that I took away from that, and I think it's sort of important in terms of Jin's arc so far, was that her explanation of why Jin wouldn't speak to her anymore was that she had humiliated him.
Yeah.
And that is clearly a big thing for Jin. It's difficult to describe, but it's like not being humiliated, being some kind of...
it feeds into that idea that basically pretended that his dad was dead because he was ashamed that his dad was just a fisherman.
Yeah. And the whole argument that took place previous episode about Son wearing a bikini thing is clearly, it's a culture thing, but it's also my wife shouldn't be doing this because that is badly reflected on me. Yeah, and that seems to be the sort of key negative trait that Jin has in terms of being the biggest obstacle that gets in his own way. So yeah, it was interesting that it was a really short little scene, but I did think, that's a really nice follow-up from the previous episode.
Yeah, and I'll give her some leeway because she's like 9 and a bit months pregnant, but it takes Claire a long time to work out that Locke is building a crib.
Yeah. That was. I mean, he could have built it the right way up to help her out a bit, but yeah. I thought that was quite funny, but it was a really nice scene because it's sort of showing a nice caring side of Locke. The fact that it helps helps Claire on a number of levels, because she's got the not feeling useless in that she's actually helping do something, and she makes mention of that. Thank you for letting me do something. You've got the the fact that it is just a nice gift when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Which clearly means a lot to her. And you also have the sort of, the interesting little bits that he's clearly a little bit probing in terms of, do you remember anything? And the assumption is that maybe he's got an interest in what Ethan and the others going on. And he sort of makes mention of, like, I think he can't quite remember the line, but he says, I'm good at putting bits and pieces together, which...
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was a really nice little side plot sort of thing that was going on. It doesn't, on the face of it, it doesn't advance anything, but at the same time, it's yet another instance of, there's Locke's having a nice one-to-one and clearly serving the needs of each individual person on the island in their sort of own unique way.
Yeah, and again as well, you get that. I think we already mentioned, you kind of get the little bit of discussion about luck and stuff that kind of ties into the bigger theme of the episode overall as well.
Yeah,
which is the idea behind the crazy numbers. And it's another character, isn't it, where we have a reason why they're all in Australia.
Yeah, so Hurley was in Australia, basically following up on the numbers thing. I mean, we don't know why Sam ends up in Australia in the first place. Just that, he used to be in the US Navy and is clearly retired. Yeah, something clearly went a bit wacky, and you kind of wonder, clearly something must have gone on that meant the two people who heard the numbers, one of which has ended up in a psychiatric ward, and the other has ended up in Australia in trying to get completely away from anyone else. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of history there that you hope will be expanded upon sometime in the future to sort of work out what's gone on there. But yeah, it gives you that, this is why Hurley was in Australia, because he was going on to find out about that. And you don't quite know exactly, like, is that literally the end of it? Was that him done in Australia and he's coming back and that's when the plane crashed, or is there more to it?
Yeah, well, I guess that's another actually intriguing thing, is clearly Hurley only thinks of the numbers in that sequence because he's got on Oceanic Flight 815. That's not triggered anything for him. So clearly Hurley only thinks of the numbers in the sequence of 4, 8, was it 4, 8, 15, 16?
4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. You've got to have 42. 42 is a great number. References to these numbers appear a few times now, particularly the 8 and the 1, 5. It certainly seems like the power or the whatever it is involves them all together. At least that seems to be Hurley's assumption on it. And do they have to be in order? All sorts of things.
Well, yeah, they're in order on the hatch. They're in the same order, and I think I need to check, but I think when you see them on Danielle's notes, they're in the same.
They're in the same order. They definitely are.
Yeah. So, and I think this is the first, like, really. You've had mystery so far, obviously, in the show. Like, there's the kind of monster thing out in the jungle. Like, there's the mystery of, like, why the plane crashed.
How Locke can walk all of a sudden.
But I think so far, this is the biggest, like, just completely paranormal mystery.
Yeah, it's the completely out there reason how Hurley is on the island and what Hurley's up to, trying to find out. This is pretty much all most of the flashback bits we've had have all been at least in some way connected to how has that person ended up on the plane and ended up on the island. And this is the same thing, but this is like, it's not down to family issues or people doing things outside of their control. Interestingly, this is the one where it's actually someone trying to find out a mystery that already exists, but has stemmed from the island, is the reason why Hurley was on the plane. Yeah.
I think, some of the other characters, there are definitely kind of elements, I think we've discussed it before, there are definitely elements in backstories for other people where it seems like they've been steered towards being
Yeah.
on that particular flight. But yeah, this is the first one where what's driving it is very clearly connected to the island, like straight away.
Yeah, it's the first one that's like done a complete circle where something that's originated from the island has caused someone to come back to the island that we know of. I mean, there could be other things.
So I think this is definitely an episode where I think it kind of captured, as a show, it captured a lot of people like completely.
Yeah,
because it's kind of been, it kind of ticks along, like throwing in occasional things up to this point, and then it just throws in this kind of really big odd. Like I think most of the other episodes so far are kind of, I would say the majority of episodes before this are character orientated, but with little added like mystery bits that kind of get put in.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe that that one with Boone and Shannon that didn't have a lot kind of to it.
Yeah.
At all really. But I think this is the first one where the kind of driving force almost of the episode is the weird thing that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you do definitely get a different impression of Hurley by the end of it. So it still is doing that. But I think this is just the thing that's driving everything along is just so significantly more out there than what we've seen before. And the fact that it's stemmed from the island, it's now linked to most of the sort of main island mysteries that you've got, because you've got the hatch it's linked to, you've got the radio transmission it's linked to, you've got the black rock that is apparently where it came from mystery, you've got the sickness, the
whatever's happened to Danielle.
Yeah, it all, it's suddenly like, it's almost like you've got these disparate mysteries going on, and all of a sudden you've added a sort of layer over the top that links them all together, which
you suddenly got a connective tissue element,
which you still don't understand and doesn't help you in any way of all the other bits. You've just made it even more complicated about what's going on.
I think this is very much, it's kind of this point, isn't it, in the series where they're kind of saying, like the producers are almost going to say, oh, you're with us so far, we've put in some weird stuff. Now let's see if we can take you with us as we completely kind of veer off into crazier stuff.
It's a good episode. I feel like, just to finish it off, I do feel like I'm going to be overly looking for these numbers, unfortunately, moving forward.
The numbers?
Yep.
What have we got coming up next?
Next time we've got Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, so that's another
which I'm never entirely sure if that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, but I think that's right.
Yeah, so next time we've got Locke again.
Hey.